He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. This saying was written in Jim Elliot's journal when he attended college in 1949. Philip James Elliot, or who was better known as Jim Elliot, was born on October 8th, 1927 in Portland, Oregon. According to Bible Hub, his father was a traveling preacher who associated with the Plymouth Brethren movement. His mom was a chiropractor. Jim Elliot was one of 4 siblings. He had 2 older brothers and 1 younger sister. The Elliots were encouraged by their parents to spend much of their time playing and exploring outdoors. Jim Elliot's parents also encouraged him to be well educated. In high school, he studied architecture and was very gifted in public speaking. He then went on to Wheaton College, where he studied linguistics. He focused mainly on Spanish and Greek. He also studied theology and practical ministry. Jim Elliot was also very athletic. He played many sports, but his main sport was wrestling. Jim Elliot was inspired by missionaries such as David Brenner, William Carey, and Amy Carmichael. That's why he wanted to become a missionary. In 1950, a former missionary told him about the Auca Indians, who were a savage and fierce tribe located in the jungles of Ecuador. Jim Elliot then had a burden for the Auca Indians of Ecuador. After graduating, he arrived in Ecuador in 1952 with his partner and friend Pete Fleming. He lived in Quito for 6 months and studied Spanish there. After 6 months, he moved out of the capital and into the jungles of Ecuador, where he lived among the Quechuayan people and studied tribal language and culture. Jim also worked with Elizabeth Howard in Ecuador, who he later married in 1953. Jim Elliot and his wife lived in Pugapinga Station jungles. There, they had their daughter Valerie, who was born on February 27, 1955. According to Elizabeth Elliot's book, Through the Gates of Splendor, Jim worked with 4 other missionaries: Roger Yadowin, Pete Fleming, Ed McCauley, and Nate Saint, who was a plane pilot. All had wives, and some of them even had young children. Each of these men were assigned to work at various jungle stations throughout the jungles of Ecuador. All had a burden for the unreached tribe of the Auca people. Jim and his four friends then made a plan to reach the Auca people. This plan was named Operation Gift Drop. They would fly circles around the Auca land, and then they would lower gifts from a bucket from their plane. The first gift was an aluminum kettle filled with brightly colored buttons and a bag of rock salt. They dropped this first gift in 1955. When they dropped the gifts, they would shout words such as "I'm your friend" or "We like you." They did this gift drop once a week for about 13 weeks. They gave hatchets, axes, shirts, pants, knives, and even cooking pots. The Aucas responded really well. They began sending gifts back of their own, such as wooden combs, woven thread, and even 2 live parrots. Jim Elliot was thrilled, and because of that, he made a new plan with his missionary friends. This new plan was called Operation Auca. On January 3rd, 1956, they set up a camp on a sandbar along the Curry River, which they called Palm Beach, which was just a few kilometers away from the Auca territory. 3 days later, after setting up camp, on January 6th, the men were startled by visitors. 1 man and 2 women came to visit them. The visit went well. They ate food and gave a gift of a model airplane to them. The men praised God for the friendly contact that they had made. The men then, after visiting with the Indians, radioed the wives the news. 2 days later, the last message they sent was, "We'll call you back in 3 hours." That was at 1:30 p.m. 4:30 came and went with no message. Later, it was discovered that there was a tribal conflict among the Aucas involving the 3 visitors at Palm Beach. A tribal conflict over one of the women resulted in a senseless attack on the missionary men. All 5 of the men were speared on the beach along the Curry River. Their only crime was trying to be friendly to the Aucas. Jim Elliot was not a failure. The deaths of him and his friends led to an open door to the isolated tribe. Because of that, Jim Elliot's wife and daughter moved into the Auca territory just 3 years later and were able to show the Aucas forgiveness. Because of that, the Auca people are no longer isolated, the blood feuds have tapered off, and they are learning to read. They have integrated with modern education. Jim Elliot was not a failure, and he succeeded with his plan to reach the Auca people.